And joining us right now on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line from Blog of the Boys, I will say this, we like this guy's takes because he's always real. He's never outlandish. Our man, RJ Ochoa, joining us from Blog of the Boys. What's going on there, RJ?
Not a whole lot. Quiet week. No big deal. Nothing crazy happening. Just Cowboys, Eagles in the most awkward possible way. Christmas and, figuring out what leg to put the pants on first in the morning.
Exactly. Before we get anything with Jalen Hurts or Gardner Minshew, how is the Dallas Cowboy community handling the devastating loss to Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars? Is everybody okay? Is it extra added motivation? Are we still crying in our cowboy hats? What are we doing? What's going on down there in Big D?
Well, first of all, I haven't been on your show since the Houston Astros won the World Series. I'm obligated to say that. I find it interesting how endeared Doug Peterson is to a team and an organization that fired him. You know what I mean? Would love this guy, but just a few years ago, wanted him the hell out of here. It was a really crushing loss. In a literal sense. I mean, it's an AFC loss, right? So you can kind of talk yourself down there. But this had been this really tense, month where it's like every Cowboys, okay, they got the win. Are the Eagles going to slip up? Are they finally going to pick up some ground? So for it to happen to Doug Peterson of all people, I don't know if you know this, the Cowboys have never won in Jacksonville. That was only their second game there ever. Just kind of the way things work out, but they'll get to try again in 2030. So we're looking forward to that.
First off, kudos to get it in there for the Houston Astros. Congratulations to the people in Texas that are Astros fans. That looked like a bit of a rough loss. Now let's get down to this. The Jalen Hurts fiasco. Most of us here in Philadelphia think that if it was a playoff game, Jalen Hurts would be out there. Jalen Hurts would be playing. Jalen Hurts had a 68-yard strike to A.J. Brown down the sideline against the Bears after the injury took place. He did very well and all that. And Gardner Minshew is most likely, yes, going to be the starter there in Dallas. First up, what's the Dallas media making of either Hurts or Minshew getting the start in Dallas on Saturday?
So there are, as I see it, three elements that make this game awkward. There's the results from Sunday, Dallas losing and Philly winning. There's the Hurts injury, which is the most seismic, at least as it relates to the rest of the season and the playoffs. And then there's the fact that these two teams might meet in the playoffs, right? So there's all these like variables that you have to weigh. And so I think every Cowboys fan or Cowboys media member wants to take the game seriously, wants to believe this is kind of vintage Cowboys Eagles, Christmas Eve, Jeff Garcia going to Texas Stadium on Christmas Day and beating Dallas. That was one of my first Cowboys games ever. But it's hard. It's hard to ignore that. And it's hard to ignore not just that Philly is so close to kind of cementing their status in the playoff picture, but that Dallas is as well. They're kind of effectively the 5 seed. And so it's weird. I think, the way I've termed it this week, I think the financial value of the win is greater for the Eagles because there's nothing bigger than the division and the 1 seed. But I do think the Cowboys are playing for more pride. I mean, coming off the loss, you do want to stack yourself up. You didn't get to play these guys with Dak. The tables have kind of turned now. It's you against their backup. So you should kind of handle business. But again, then you kind of say, well, there's a lot of pressure. And then, well, there's not because, you could drop this game very easily and not really suffer much. They have not lost 2 games in a row this season. Obviously, the Eagles have not. So you do have that kind of going for you. But I think people that kind of in and out and feeling clunky or awkward is, I think, the best way to put it because of the particularly extenuating circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is an interesting thing here. Dallas could still win the number 1 spot in the NFC. I mean, a lot has to go right, including the Eagles lose out, which if the injury is legit to Jalen Hurts, I mean, it could happen. But there is still a little bit more at stake here. I mean, there is pride, but there is a shot here that Dallas gets the number 1 seed.
That's true. So Dallas would have to win out, Philly would have to lose out, and then the Cowboys would need 1 loss from both the Niners and the Vikings. So all that goes their way. And a partridge in a pear tree, right? Obligatory sort of Christmas comment. They're the 1 seed. They could also win the division and not be the 1 seed if they just get their end and Philly's end. What I think is interesting is Dallas plays on Thursday night next week. So obviously, I know Eagles fans will be paying attention. I know there's the tie scenario with Minnesota if they lose or win, whatever. But even if the Cowboys beat the Eagles and they don't get any help or whatever you want to call it, their game next Thursday is kind of meaningless. I mean, they do kind of have to play, right? Because they, don't know if Philly would lose out. But Philly could put an end to it next Sunday against the Saints. And if that happened, they would lock Dallas into the 5 seed if Minnesota gets a win this week as well. obviously a lot of balls up in the air, but that's what makes it weird and that's what makes it strange. And, you do start asking, okay, Micah's a little bit, tired. Do you rest Micah Parsons? Is it worth it? Do you let Micah go get his moment after his little comment about Jalen Hurts, but Hurts isn't playing? Like, you can talk yourself around in circles forever on this game.
Now, that's an interesting thing I want to tackle right now. No pun intended. Micah Parsons' comments. And is it Jalen Hurts or is it the system? Is it Jalen Hurts or is it the team? Well, the funny thing is, we just spent a week for the most part leading up to the Bears game talking about Micah Parsons' comments. And we're also talking about how Micah Parsons is wrong. What does he know? And now it's like, well, damn, I really hope he was right now. Because you want it to obviously be the team. So that's another rock in a hard place. Another awkward thing is that Micah Parsons, what the hell does he know about football? And now we're in a situation where it's like in Philadelphia, we're almost rooting for Micah Parsons to be right, that it isn't just all Jalen Hurts, that it is at least a lot of the team that will help this Eagles team, come out with a victory against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange and awkward. Like I said, I can't recall any game, not just Cowboys-Eagles or Cowboys game, but any game that was this weird and diametrically opposing one another in so many particular senses. And so, like to your point, like if the Cowboys blow out the Minshew-led Eagles, are my mentions full of Eagles fans? Told y'all, Micah was so stupid. You know what I mean? Like, look how needed Jalen is. And so, I do think it's strange, and I do Look, if I'm being honest, I would love to see. I think the Cowboys win, and I mean, if it goes, and that's partly just going chalk, right? Dallas is favored, Minshew factor, whatever. I would love to see how Nick Sirianni would handle a world where, say, Dallas wins next Thursday night, and say New Orleans stun the Eagles. I would love to see that, like week 18. Oh man, Hurts may or may not be ready. He's got to come back. They got to lock up the 1 seed. Like, but that's what this is about. This is a really And we kind of talked about that, obviously leading up to the last Cowboys game. How good is this Cowboys team? Can they carry Cooper Rush? Are they going to be limited by him against these big, bad, mighty Philadelphia Eagles? And they were. Like, they made it a bit of a game in the second half, but they clearly had a glass ceiling. And so I sort of expect the same to be true the opposite direction.
Yeah, I know one thing that we're rooting here in Philadelphia, not just for an Eagles win, but, oh, wait, hold on. We beat their backup and they couldn't beat our backup. Like, that's kind of a storyline that we're getting into. When it comes to Parsons, though, how serious illness? You mentioned fatigue. You mentioned tired. What is the deal with him right now? Do you fully expect him to be playing in this game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he'll play. I do think the Cowboys reckon that they can say what they want, right? Like, oh, we play to win. We could win the 1 seed, whatever. Like, we're all adults, right? Like, Santa's not real. He's not coming on Saturday night to people's houses. Just being cool. Unless he is. It's up to people. I mean, Micah's had a weird kind of little run here in December. The night the Cowboys hosted the Colts, the Thursday before that, Matt Judon did not have a sack for the Patriots. And so I wrote something at our site like, hey, this is Micah's moment. He can take over the lead in sacks. He can take over Defensive Player of the Year. That did happen, but just to Nick Bosa that week. He had 3 sacks against the Dolphins and has since kind of run away with the award. Micah finally got a sack last week against Trevor Lawrence. And it was a bit of a quiet game. He had the fumble recovery that everybody saw that Dallas couldn't capitalize on. 12 pressures, and so he was kind of back. But everything around him is either all on or not. And so he hasn't had those like super freak God mode, Super Saiyan Micah moments that we got so used to. And maybe that's just like, hey, turns out he can't be like the greatest defensive player in the world all of the time, which is new and uncharted territory for the Cowboys. But I'd say last week was an improvement from his performance against the Texans and the Colts, certainly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, looking at potentially the Jalen Hurts less Philadelphia Eagles and Gardner Minshew as their signal caller, what is it on this Eagles team that jumps out to you that said, okay, Jalen Hurts isn't in there. What else do we got to watch out for?
I mean, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are I'm definitely terrified of A.J. Brown. Like, as a human being, like, I feel like he could end my life. I might last like 10 more minutes against Devontae. Like, I'm not saying it would be pretty, but like, I feel just a hair less intimidated. And so I don't trust, I trust Trayvon Diggs with, basically in my life in a football sense, but the Dallas Cowboys don't have much on the opposite side as far as starting corners are concerned. Anthony Brown was lost a few weeks ago. He was part of the famed Dak and Zeke draft class and it's kind of been overlooked and underrated a lot since then. But turns out he was kind of critical and kind of important. The Cowboys haven't found anybody. Last week, they relied on last year's second-round draft pick, Kelvin Joseph, and he just got destroyed. I mean, just got worked. Zay Jones had 3 touchdowns against the Cowboys. Kelvin got benched. And so they're really struggling. And so if you can't hang with Zay Jones, I mean, can you hang with Devontae Smith even for 10 minutes like me? I mean, so that's definitely what I'm most concerned about.
Okay. When it comes to the story surrounding Jalen Hurts, is the Dallas media looking at Hurts right now as if this is more gamesmanship and the possibility that you even just pointed out of seeing the Cowboys down the line in the playoffs and the Cowboys seeing the Eagles? Is any of this at least tipping the scale at gamesmanship or legit injury when it comes to the Hurts injury right now? Is it legit, do you think, or do you think this is just a matter of not showing too much before the playoffs?
I mean, I certainly can't speak for everybody, but my own personal read on it is, and to be very clear, it's really unfortunate. I hate the oh, now we get their backup. Like, that's so stupid to me. Like, all injuries suck. Jalen, is the rightful MVP, I think, this season, the way once was in 2017. My dog is barking in agreement. His name is Bear, so he's really sore about the results from last week. But anyway, but being matter of fact, and I guess being blunt, it's one thing for the line on this game to shift, right? Okay, fine. That's a little bit weird, whatever. It's a whole another thing for me for the line on his MVP odds to shift. Because even if he had to miss one game, granted, it's a big game. Like, that's what's got a lot of us, I think, saying this definitely feels real. And again, that sounds like it's carrying hope. It's certainly not. I mean, it's just looking at these cards and these variables the way that they are at this particular moment. So the fact that his MVP odds are so impacted, the fact that there has been all this well, it's not season ending, why are these words coming out of anybody's mouths? Like, it does feel, and I think from personal experience, whenever the Cowboys have had an injury, of course they're underselling the impact of it, and so it does kind of look and smell like that from the surface. Now, for the Eagles case and for all football fans' case, I hope that it's true. I hope that it's really not that bad. I hope he could play next week if he really had to, but it does seem maybe not like there's smoke, there's fire situation, but there's a lot of smoke and you're wondering what's going on underneath.
I am curious, going back to the loss in Jacksonville. I have never been a really big Mike McCarthy fan. What's the fan base right now? How they feel about their head coach?
I mean, I'll be honest, the fan base is broken. Like, I mean, this is the most broken the Cowboys fan base has been in a long time. I think this past week has shown how fragile it can be. And I think that looking back on it, the demolition of the Vikings really warped what are not fair expectations of the Cowboys, but fair expectations of any football team, right? I mean, that the Eagles, when they struggled against the Colts, I'm sure that was a long week of what are you doing? This is so embarrassing, blah, blah, blah. And so is Mike McCarthy perfect? No. But I don't know if you're aware, the Cowboys have won double-digit games in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 1995 and 1996. They've secured a playoff berth in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 2006 and 2007. That's not to say build a statue, but it's to say this team has had a long-standing 15, 20, 25-year run of incompetence. And he has come and stabilized that within 3 years. I mean, his first opportunity to do those things, he did it. And again, make fun of them for holding on to Jason Garrett as long as they did, as much as you want. That's complete and total fair game. But I think he's such a meme and he's such a joke that I think people take that low hanging fruit and they don't recognize, I mean, the great job he's done. Will they win the Super Bowl? Probably not, because if you had to bet your mortgage on one team or the field, I think we would all take the field always. And so it's a very difficult thing to do. But he's getting them to a place as a franchise where they're consistently there. They're always hanging out. They're always a playoff team. And if you're there year in and year out, odds are, they're not a guarantee, but that eventually fate will probably smile upon you.
Speaking of that word, eventually, will Odell Beckham Jr. eventually be a Dallas Cowboy?
Maybe in 2023. I'm really happy this week. If I'm grateful for the loss, for anything, that's that it took away attention from that. That was, and I'll be honest with you, at first it was a lot of fun. It was really, I'm sure when you first met your wife, flirty. Oh, she texted me back. You know what I mean? It had that kind of energy. And so it really was fun. And that was kind of the Vikings win and Thanksgiving and all the good vibes. But it really just kind of wore on everybody. Like the same old thing. Well, no, we're not saying no. I know we signed T.Y. Hilton, but, watch. It's just, it seems a little bit silly at this point in time. And I give them a lot of credit for that, honestly. And I know that sounds silly. In the past, they would have just jumped at that. But they enjoyed the ride. They enjoyed the fun and the flirting. They assessed him medically, and he wasn't where they needed him to be, and they made an objective decision. They haven't been capable of that in a long time. They've always gotten emotionally caught up, and so I give them credit for learning to be adults. That's who the 2022 Cowboys are.
I love it. Well, hopefully they have a regression to adolescence for our sake here in Philadelphia on Saturday. What are you leaning towards as far as a prediction? You mentioned you think the Cowboys win this game. What are you leaning towards at the time we tape this on this Wednesday afternoon?
I think the Cowboys win. And again, I think it goes chalk. I could see it being somewhat close, but I could also see, and I really do say this not in a fun, trolly way, I could see the Cowboys like just routing them, right? Like a 30-13 win. And there's like look, we didn't need this win. We had 3 chances. Everybody was dealing with the shock of the Hurts thing, whatever. We got 2 at home. We got the motivation of beating the Saints because of the draft pick. Who cares? Let the Cowboys have their moment. And I could see Dallas kind of pounding their chest a little bit. And I honestly think, it benefits hear me out. I've explained this to some Eagles people this week and nobody agrees. I think it benefits the Eagles to lose this game in a weird way, because it motivates the Eagles to play next week against the Saints. You have to play unless the Cowboys lost to the Titans, obviously on Thursday night. But look, it's a good problem to have, to debate, like, should we rest? Should we take them off? Should we give them a week off, 2 weeks off to bye, whatever, blah, blah. But the hand for you is forced. If the Eagles lose this game and the Cowboys win next week on Thursday night, you have to beat the Titans. That means you technically only have one game, week 18, that is completely consequence-free. You have the bye week. I think that's best for everybody, because that would also mean that week 18 was meaningless for the Cowboys. I don't think you want 2 weeks of truly meaningless football. I understand it would be fun. You want the division, the caps, the T-shirts as soon as possible. But so because it makes sense for the NFL too, I don't think they want a dud Thursday night game. If you're a believer in conspiracy theories, I think the Cowboys get this one.
It's fascinating. I've never heard a Cowboys-Eagles game being described as awkward. Usually venomous, rivalry, something like that. How's it going to be? Awkward. It's going to be weird. Everyone's going to feel weird. It's going to be really weird. But it's a good way to describe it.
Will you be upset if they lose? Will you be even 1%? You'll be annoyed at the Cowboys-Eagles part of it. But
sure,
from a competitive standpoint, I don't think you'll be impacted one way or another.
Tell me they lose this game right now without watching the game, and maybe a key fumble at the wrong moment, or a really bad play call, or a bad officiating call, whatever, something like that. But barring anything like that, yes, I will just be annoyed. I won't be outraged. They don't have their MVP quarterback caliber, and you agree, of course. But the thing that makes me come back down to earth, because my first thought when Hurts got injured was 50-13 Cowboys win this game somehow, right? But the more I think about it, and I try to be somewhat objective about it, or at least do an impersonation of someone who's objective, is the Cowboys or the Eagles have a really good defense. I understand the Cowboys do as well, but you're throwing into the 2 best corners in the NFL when you talk about James Bradbury, the year they're having, and Darius Slay, and you talk about this defensive line that they have bulked up, the way they've been playing. It's a lot to handle for Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, great players, obviously. And the dual threat you have at the running back position there. It is a good defense. They have forced turnovers. Cowboys have been right there forcing turnovers as well this year. So that to me might be the only equalizer when you talk about this game, is the turnover differential.
I agree with you entirely. And this was, if they meet in the divisional round, I don't know that I'll sleep. You know what I mean? That week, it'll be stressful and awful. But to me, it kind of feels like you ever play like a video game and there's this super hard level that you just can't do it. You know what? I need to lower the setting. I need to lower it's on too hard, too difficult of a setting. I'm going to lower this setting. And I think there's like a natural setting lowering of the Eagles because, and that's not to say or at all imply that they don't care. They're not driven. I think that's not my point. But I think the nature of the awkwardness, I think the nature of losing Hurts, I think it's different. Like the stake, you cannot convince yourself the stakes are as high as they were a week ago. The stakes were higher against the lowly Chicago Bears than they will be this particular game. You got 3 strikes, to bring it back to the Astros Phillies. You're going to swing on the first one? No, you got 2 more to burn. That's just kind of the way it is.
Phenomenal. All right. And for the record, what is Houston? Like 3 hours, 3.5 from Dallas? What's the distance there?
It is, but Texas is really big, and so I'm not originally from the DFW area. So I'm from South Texas, and just 90s kid. Time I grew up, it just worked out in my household. Cowboys, Astros. I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan, so I spread love all over the state.
Look at you.
And so it's an interesting dichotomy. I know in states like Pennsylvania, no, we don't do that. This is how we roll. Whatever. You're Penguins, you're Flyers, you're Pirates, you're Phillies. You got to be one or the other. So that's not how it works here.
Yeah, see, in Philadelphia, we can't stand on our tallest building and see Pittsburgh. We got mountains in the way. In Houston and Dallas and it's all flat. So you guys can say that you see cities from your, what's that? That's 18 hours away, but it's right there. No, I'm kidding. But I appreciate you, man. RJ, always great catching up with you. Thanks so much. Make sure you're reading RJ Ochoa stuff from bloggingtheboys.com. Appreciate you, RJ. Thanks very much.
Of course, man. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas to you as well, my friend. Thank you.